Greetings, Code Monkeys, and welcome back to CodedLockFilms. And now it is time for the Q&A. I got some pretty good ones. I'm excited to answer them. Keep in mind, though, that this is a Q&A about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you submitted just general superhero questions, then yeah, I'm not going to be touching on those, at least not for the most part, because if I touched on every single one of those just general superhero questions, this video would be way too long. I may use those questions in a future Q&A down the line, but for now, I'm just going to stick to the Marvel Cinematic Universe questions, so take it away, Rupert.
Thank you, my good man. I've got the list right here. Have you seen the Marvel one-shot All Hail the King, and what did you think of the Mandarin twist featured in it?
I have seen it. I have seen all of the MCU one-shots. They're kind of hit and miss. This one didn't really do much for me. It mainly just seemed like an attempt to kind of placate the fans who might have been upset that the movie didn't go with a straight-up faithful recreation of the Mandarin from the comics. I honestly don't think that Marvel has any plans to go anywhere with the whole supposed reveal that the Mandarin and the Ten Rings are an actual thing. Like I said, it just seems like fan placation. So yeah, it didn't really do much for me. I liked Agent Carter and whatever, I can't remember what the name of that other one was, where it's like the two people find the Chitauri gun and like do like a Bonnie and Clyde type thing, like Item 47 I want to say it's called. Those two are both pretty good. The others are just, you know, eh.
What is something the MCU could teach the DCEU and vice versa?
The DCEU is a great cautionary tale, and I suppose Marvel could teach the DCEU that if you want to build a franchise, it's best to build it off the backs of movies that don't suck.
What are the chances of Fing Fang Foom being introduced to the MCU, and would it come across as racist?
For those of you who don't know, Fing Fang Foom is this character who's like, he looks like a Chinese dragon, but he's actually an alien. I don't think there's a high likelihood of him being introduced to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Maybe you'll see him in like the background of a Guardians of the Galaxy movie at some point. I don't know. I don't think it would have to be racist. I mean, if you just take it to the basic premise of dragon who is actually an alien, there's plenty of ways to do that where you don't have to involve anything that could be construed as racist. So yeah, I don't think it'll happen, but, you know, there's no reason it has to be racist.
Is that an MCU movie you consider outright bad?
No, I wouldn't really call any of them bad. Like I said, I don't really like the second Avengers movie all that much, but I don't think it's bad. I mean, it's an average movie. Like, it's fine.
How would you feel about Marvel getting back the rights to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four?
The Fantastic Four, I think there are a lot of creative ways that you could integrate them into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Link in the video description for a video that discusses that in some pretty great detail. The X-Men, I think, might be a little bit harder to integrate into the MCU, just because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been kind of back-built to not feature mutants. And the X-Men are kind of fairly central to the history of the Marvel Universe proper. They were involved in a lot of really important historical events, so I don't know that it would be terribly easy to integrate them into the MCU, but I mean, you could do it. I was never that big of a fan of the X-Men anyway, so I'm just kind of like, nah about it.
Are there any MCU movies that you would consider to be among your all-time favorite movies?
Yeah, the Captain America series. I really, really like them, in particular the first.
Since Wonder Woman was a success, which Marvel superheroine should get their own movie?
This is what's known as a question wrongly phrased, because the greenlighting of any female-led superhero movie should not be contingent upon the success or failure of other female-led superhero movies. Like, if Iron Man had not been a very good movie, nobody would have said, like, oh, well, we can't have male-led superhero movies anymore because obviously they just don't work. Like, that's sort of asinine. But I don't know. I mean, they've greenlit, a couple of, Miss Marvel is coming up. I would say of ones that like haven't been announced, I would maybe do Squirrel Girl. I think you could create something, within the MCU that's targeted at a very different kind of demographic, that would be pretty entertaining. Yeah, I guess that's just the first thing that came to my mind. But yeah, I would do Squirrel Girl.
Do you think it's necessary for the movies to adapt the comics well if adapting a particular storyline?
I guess that depends on what you mean by adapting the comics well. If by well you mean faithfully, first of all, I disagree with your definition of well. But yeah, no, I don't think it's necessary to be faithful. I mean, Captain America Civil War is not a faithful adaptation at all of the Civil War storyline in the Marvel Universe proper. And yeah, it's much, much better for it because the Civil War storyline in the comics is a pile of hot garbage, and Captain America Civil War is one of the best movies in the MCU. So yeah, I would say it's a good adaptation because it takes the basic idea behind the adaptation and uses it to do things that are interesting and don't suck. So I would call that a good adaptation. Certainly not a faithful one, but I would say it's good. I don't think it's, yes, it's, so yeah, to answer your question, yes, it's necessary for the adaptation to be good, but it's not necessary for it to be faithful. Like, no, not at all.
Favorite Stan Lee cameo?
Probably the one in Captain America the First Avenger. I just find something really entertaining about the way Stan Lee looks at the guy next to him and says, I thought he'd be taller. I don't know why. That one just... that's the only one that I laugh at every single time I see it.
What line or scene of any MCU film paid a nice homage to the comics?
Nice homage to the comics. I'd say my personal favorite example of this is the way that Captain America the First Avenger... I like how it doesn't shy away from Captain America's origins as propaganda. It kind of integrates that into the movie and into the character's personal journey. I think that's a really cool piece of homage and a good acknowledgement of the history of the character.
How do you feel about the film scores? Do you like that the MCU has a bit of grit to it, or do you think it's starting to take itself too seriously?
I wouldn't say that the MCU overall has a bit of grit to it. I think that where there is some grit, it's been well applied. Like, Captain America the Winter Soldier is definitely a more sort of down and dirty, fisticuffs and knives kind of movie when it comes to the combat. And I think that it suited the tone of that movie really well. But no, I don't think that the MCU is starting to take itself too seriously. It takes itself exactly as seriously as it needs to for the movies to work and for the interpersonal character drama to be interesting.
What would you like to see in a Black Widow movie?
To be honest, I wouldn't like to see a Black Widow movie because Black Widow, to me, what makes her fun and what makes her entertaining to watch is that you never know quite where she's going to fall on anything, and you don't really know what she's thinking or what her motivations are until it's time for you to find out. And I think you kind of lose that if you make her the main character, because you need to have greater insight into her. And to me, that's just not the type of character that Black Widow is meant to be. I think she shines best as a secondary character in other stuff. She's really great in Civil War. She's really great in The Winter Soldier. If I were to say, if somebody were to say, okay, we're making a Black Widow movie, what do we do? I would say maybe, do something that's, half Bourne movie and half Die Hard, like the earlier Die Hards, and just sort of mash them together and make Black Widow the main character, and that's about how I would do it. But, like I said, I think that giving her own solo movie would kind of take away from what makes her enjoyable. But, that's just me.
What do you think of the back and forth shipping wars Natasha gets into?
They are stupid and unnecessary and don't serve her character or any of the characters that people ship her with at all. Yeah, it's dumb.
Do you think the MCU will have an end to it?
Yeah, at some point. I mean, nothing lasts forever, especially in pop culture. I would just hope that the MCU gets to end on its own terms and end in a way that is satisfying.
What's the best way to introduce someone to the MCU?
The best way to introduce someone to the MCU, I would say think about that person and about the type of movies and the type of stories that they like to see, and then pick the movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe that best fits that type. The great thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is they're doing a lot of experiments with different genres and different ways of kind of getting a story across, different settings. So yeah, just think about the person you want to introduce to the MCU and pick the movie that fits them best.
What's your dream MCU movie?
My dream MCU movie already exists. It's called Captain America: The First Avenger.
How would you do a She-Hulk movie?
I don't know that I would do a She-Hulk movie. I'd do a She-Hulk series, like a Netflix miniseries type thing. To me, some of the more interesting aspects of the MCU are when the filmmakers basically start with the sentence, what if blank had a superhero in it? Like, Ant-Man is a heist movie where the main character just happens to be Ant-Man. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a conspiracy thriller where the main character just happens to be Captain America. I find that those kinds of experiments have produced some of the more interesting things in the MCU. So with She-Hulk, I would make like a procedural crime/courtroom drama where the main character just happens to be She-Hulk. That's what I would do.
Do you have any thoughts on the whole is Stan Lee a named character thing?
My thoughts on this are actually surprisingly complicated and long-winded, so I'm actually going to make that a separate video. I'll put it out sometime during VEDS.
Who would you like to direct an MCU film?
I would really like to see Guillermo del Toro direct a Ghost Rider movie.
Which MCU film do you most look forward to?
I look forward to pretty much all of them. I'm particularly interested to see where they go with the Black Panther, because, I mean, his origin story has basically been told in the background of Captain America: Civil War, so I'm curious as to what shape a Black Panther movie is going to take now. I'm interested to see what they do with that.
Thoughts on the Steve Sharon romance?
I think that if they really want to make the romance between Steve and Sharon a thing, then they need to give it more screen time to flesh it out, because they just haven't done much with it yet. I mean, to me, at the moment, it just seems like these two people are interested in each other, but circumstance does not really allow them to pursue it, which, you know, it can be interesting in its own right, but yeah, it's very clearly an afterthought in the movies. But, I mean, to be fair, Captain America is the kind of guy that would probably inspire a lot of ladies to pursue him, even briefly. So, yeah, I mean, it's fine. It doesn't really bother me, but, you know, I don't have any particular thoughts on it.
What would it take for an MCU villain team-up movie to work?
You need more memorable villains, honestly. And you need villains who are the type that don't mind working as part of, like, a posse or an ensemble. You could probably do it with the Sinister Six in the Spider-Man movies. Like, that's... You know, that's generally had some pretty decent results, but that would be way down the line.
Any lesser-known characters you'd like to see in the MCU? Where's Nick Fury? What do you think of him?
Nick Fury is wherever the plot needs him to be. He is in many ways more of a plot device than a character. But yeah, I mean, I think Nick Fury is cool. You know, Sam Jackson, hard to go wrong there. And I really like, in particular, how they use him in Captain America: The Winter Soldier as part of how they really shake up the status quo of the MCU in that movie.
Should Daredevil or The Punisher have gotten their own movies instead of Netflix series?
Not really. I mean, I think that Daredevil and The Punisher are pretty well suited to more small-scale, serial kind of storytelling, as opposed to, you know, like a big-budget movie type thing.
Which MCU character should have their own spin-off?
I think you could do some really interesting stuff with the earlier parts of Nick Fury's life. Apparently there are plans to go at least partially in that direction with Miss Marvel, I think. So apparently we are going to get something like that, which is cool. I also think Agent Hill. I would like to see Agent Hill in more stuff. Agent Hill is cool, and I want I want more of that. I want more of Kobe Smulders being Agent Hill. Yeah, she's cool. More of that. I'm being redundant.
Do you think Rocket Raccoon could get a movie based on his comic origins that would fit into the MCU? If you don't know the original story, you may have to do a bit of research.
Oh, research during a month where I'm putting out a video every 3 days. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Sorry, I do not have the time.
Which MCU film would you most like to live in?
If you mean live in as myself, like as a civilian, I wouldn't, because being a civilian in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is awful. Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I really like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but good God, I would not want to live in it.
Alright, we're moving on now, chaps. First we've got a couple of questions for the editor.
Hold on there, Rupert, let me just touch on this for a second. Yeah, the editor is not going to be making a personal appearance. He's still kind of ticked off from the last Q&A. Dude's got a little bit of a temper, so I am going to answer these questions for him. He has sent me his responses, so yeah, go ahead, ask away.
Well, as you say, any superhero movie you dream of editing?
As to this, the editor says that he's not terribly interested in editing any superhero movie. He's not really into a big undertaking like that. He prefers more small-scale stuff.
What's the best thing about the editing in the MCU movies?
According to the editor, the best thing about the editing in the MCU movies is the way that the genre and the type of storytelling are allowed to affect the pacing and the editing and the way that the movie is put together in order to enhance the type of story that they're trying to do. He thinks that that's pretty impressive. And I think that was it for the editor questions. Only 2 of them, which honestly I think he's fine with. Although there was at least one question that was not related to the MCU, but was definitely designed to troll the editor. And yeah, I did not share that question with him. I read the damn comments, and I am not in a dark room, you stupid, asinine little... Okay, we are done. Moving on.
Righto, there's a couple here for Entropy as well. Were you able to get your hands on some alien machines after the Battle of New York?
First of all, I just want to make sure that we're all clear on this. The Battle of New York in the Avengers, that was in a movie. It was a fictional event. It didn't actually happen. So I wouldn't have been able to be present in the aftermath because, you know, it was a movie. That being said, I don't need their cast-offs. I don't need to go picking through bits of alien scrap metal in order to create amazing works of super science. I'm a mad scientist. It's what I do. I don't need a crutch. All I need are some raw materials, this amazing brain of mine, and ideally access to ample supplies of uranium.
Which is stronger, Nintendium or Vibranium?
Nintendium. The answer is always Nintendium.
On to Creeper now. Who's easiest to creep on? Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, the Wasp, or Gamora?
I've tried creeping on several different superheroines. I wouldn't recommend it. They punch really hard. Really, really hard.
Ah, I see there's one here for me as well. Does Jesse let you watch the MCU movies? Which are to your liking? Does he let me watch the MCU movies? I take umbrage with your question, sir, or madam, or possibly non-binary individual. Jesse is an upstanding young man, but he does not let me do anything. I am my own man, and I make my own choices. I am not a possession to be handled or a servant to be ordered about. I am Rupert Cornelius Codswallop III, British gentleman, and I shall watch whatever works of cinema I choose. That being said, I'm a fan of Thor. I enjoy the Shakespearean tone, you see. There's a few here for all of us. Team Iron Man, Team Captain America, Team Thor, or Team Guardians of the Galaxy?
I'm thinking Team False Dichotomies are a logical fallacy. Sounds good to me.
Splendid assessment.
What's a fallacy?
Who is your favorite superhero?
Captain America. I don't know if I've gotten that across yet. I like Cap. I'd have to say Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man. Now there was a guy who had scientific vision.
Do I have to pick someone from the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Nah, you know what? I think as long as it's Marvel, you're probably fine.
Well then, Union Jack it is.
Have you ever actually read any of the comics that feature Union Jack?
No.
Do you know anything about him at all?
No.
Is it because he's the one with the British flag on his chest?
It is because he's the one with the British flag on his chest.
And that is it for the MCU Q&A. Thank you all for submitting your questions. I'm going to take the month of August off, and I will be back for VEDS. So until next time, Code Monkeys, I will see you later.
How would you feel about Marvel getting back the rights to X-Men?